absolutely. I mean, if you come here as a neutral today and brought your young kids to watch a game of football, you're going to go home thinking what a fantastic game of football. Lots of goals, lots of incidents, pretty much everything going on in the game. Unfortunately, we're dealing in the world of professional football, and in professional football, there's only one thing that matters. You've got to win your games, and if you're not going to win your games, you've got to draw your games. And sadly, Leicester have done neither today. Individual mistakes have cost them, and you just wonder how painful this result could be come the end of the season. They've got 3 games to put it right, but they've got to start putting it right quickly.
So applause from the Leicester fans in the corner of the stadium as we look over here as Dean Smith thanks them for their efforts this afternoon. But it has been a day that will not live long in the memory at all. A balmy game at times. Fulham were 3-0 up at half-time, 4-0 up 6 minutes into the second half when Tom Kearney grabbed his second of the game. Barnes gave Leicester some hope with a goal back on 59. On 66, Jamie Vardy missed from the spot, and 4 minutes later, Willian made it 5 for Fulham. Maddison pulling a goal back from another penalty, and Barnes after that a minute from time. But it was beyond Leicester at that point. They'd given too much to their opposition, and they've been punished here at Craven Cottage, where Dan, I have to sadly hand back to you with a full-time score of Fulham 5, Leicester City 3.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, not much to report really from Craven Cottage in terms of positivity. Oh. Obviously plenty happened on the pitch there, but a damaging defeat for Leicester City, Matt.
Yeah, and the manner of it as well. I mean, okay, 3 goals, and could have been more, bizarrely. It was a crazy game, wasn't it, really? But the damage had already been done by half-time, really. Although, I'm sure Joe's going to mention it as well, the Vardy miss, we'll never know with the penalty, but it could have been huge. Like if that had been converted, and subsequently Leicester had a couple of chances, but I don't know. We'll just have to sort of invent what might have happened, but what did happen, pretty damaging, really, if you're honest. I mean, the sort of limpness of the performance where it mattered in the first half, and then Fulham chopped and changed a little bit, stopped playing to a level, didn't they? You felt that, I don't know, that could have been any sort of score, that game, literally, and that's not good. That's not good going forward, because you've got to worry, and football's a bizarre game. It's strange how things can turn out, but because of the manner and the ease with which goals were conceded and situations were created against them, going up against Liverpool and Newcastle afterwards, you're thinking, how's that going to be changed? How are things going to be secured in that small space of time?
Yeah, I think, just on the back of what Matt's saying, he just mentioned the manner, and I think, at this stage of the season, with a league position being what it is, coming away to a team like Fulham who are struggling themselves a little bit for form, to then concede 5 goals in the way that they did, and yes, they've scored 3. We knew they got goals in them, but to concede the goals in the manner they did is, big issue here for Leicester City, to be honest. And I mean, especially when you go away from home, when you're suffering at the wrong end of the league, you have to put the onus on your defensive qualities first and try. Yeah. You have to, because the league says, and the goal scoring table, should I say, or the goal difference table tells you that is the biggest issue that Leicester have, and so the onus has to be on not conceding, and not conceding early, and not conceding giving away simple goals, and unfortunately all those things didn't happen today.
Tony, we're seeing some dejected faces in that Leicester City away and on the feed that we've got. Just how disappointing does it feel down there at Craven Cottage from a Leicester point of view?
Oh, massive, Dan. I feel for the fans. They stuck with the boys throughout that second half. They could easily have walked out at 4-0 or 5-1, take your pick, but they stuck with the players. Mixed reaction as they came off the pitch at the end of the game. I'm sitting amongst the Leicester contingent here, and we're all pretty sort of disappointed about what's gone on. It's a big disappointment for everyone, really. I didn't see it coming. I honestly didn't. I thought Leicester would come here today, and I thought they would give a good account of themselves. But how many times have we said it, Dan, throughout the season? We keep talking about it, whether it's after a match or on a Monday night. You know, individual mistakes just keep costing everyone, and you can do all the preparation and planning in the world if you're just making those silly errors, which happens when you're down the bottom. We know that, but make it one error, not 4 errors, because if you make 4 errors, you get punished in the Premier League, and it's just a real blow to what Leicester are trying to achieve, which is just to stay in the Premier League for this season.
I think you've got to learn from mistakes as well. You look at how the goals were conceded, etc. And they're just, I mean, I had worries before the game about the solidity of Leicester's midfield. Never mind the back four. I know there have been issues in various areas of the pitch, but yeah, it was just like an all round that it affected individuals really. I mean, diving in, Dennis Pratt's come in to do a job defensively, whatever. He dived in for the free kick that was conceded. If you do your work properly, then you know, in an ideal world, you haven't got to dive in and lunge and make that challenge. Get yourself in position right, and I don't know, get information off other players. Communication seems it's hard to tell because you're not actually there on the pitch. Obviously, we can't hear what they say, but they don't look like they're in touch with each other, helping each other out, guiding each other, like helping with positioning, etc. But you know, I might be wrong on that. Those players might contest that, but just all round, wasn't it? You know, Sumari not learning lessons about being aware who's in around him, loses possession, and then Leicester exposed, etc. And it's just so many things went wrong that were learnable from before, really, and they're pretty basic stuff as well, Chags.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the most frustrating thing as a coach or a manager when you're seeing all the frailties, and then you're trying to put them right on a training pitch, and you're hoping and you're thinking that you've got that message across to the players who are going out onto the pitch and playing, and then they come and have to watch back after today that video, and as Matt's just said, not just the back line, the midfield as well. You have to say, at times, you know, didn't know where the opposition players were when they were coming forward. The gaps were there again, all to see. And those are the types of things that the coaching staff would have gone over with the players during training this week. And now they've come to Fulham and they've seen it all happen and unfold in front of their eyes yet again. And so as a manager and as a coaching staff, you start banging your head against the brick wall saying, how do we put this right now after this display?
And how is that done, Tony? Obviously easier said than done, but it's a huge week on the training ground, isn't it, for Dean Smith, Craig Shakespeare and John Terry?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we're dissecting the game, Dan. I think for me the worst goal is the third one. You know, I said in commentary, do not concede before half time. You're 2-0 down. Do the right things, and they take a short goal kick. These short goal kicks are absolutely driving me insane. Because why do it? Because all you're ultimately going to do, I think it was Fasu, Soyuncu, whoever it was in the corner, tries to pump it long. Now, if you're going to pump it long, which he didn't do, by the way, but if you're going to do that, get the goalkeeper to do it. Squeeze up to the halfway line. Get the ball into the Fulham half. Do not concede just before half time. It was just a crazy goal to give away, and then you know you're right up against it. And of course, when the fourth one goes in, ultimately, as much as we was all praying, you felt that the game was over. But what do they do about it? They need to sit down. They need to review it. They need to go through it and say to the players, you know, don't take chances. Don't do this. Don't do that. But you can talk to players until you're blue in the face. But if the players don't make those decisions on the pitch, as a manager and a coach, you can't influence. I saw John Terry before the game talking away to Soyuncu. I don't know what he was saying, but you know, you've got a world-class defender giving that information, and yet you still get players making mistakes. It's so frustrating. But the other thing I would say, though, Dan, is it's gone, it's done. And, you know, you can dissect it as much as you want, but you've got to try and somehow keep the spirits up in the camp, because they've got a massive 3 games coming up. And if you go into that game against Liverpool, you know, and against Newcastle, and your heads are down on the floor, there's only going to be one outcome. They've got to keep it fresh. They've got to keep them up. It's done. Yes, of course, sit down tomorrow, analyse it, try and learn from it, but you've got to move on from it.
Just going back to what Tony said before that about it's almost like a default position that Leicester take up from goal kicks, especially, as in we'll play it short to one of the centre halves, and then we'll see what develops. Well, there's no, and what Tony's trying to say is, yes, the two centre halves can stand the other side of the 6-yard box, but when you open your eyes and look forward and look out on the pitch, you've got to understand if there's a scenario that you can play your way through, and if there isn't, if you cannot see that scenario, then as a keeper and two centre halves, you say, right, listen, it's not on. We've got to go long. Maybe in the next time there's a goal kick or a free kick, we can play it short, and we can see a scenario where we can play our way out. But it seems to be a default position. Goal kick, you get it down, you play short, and most teams, if not all the teams that play against Leicester, know exactly how to defend against it, because they've seen it that often this season. And not only have they seen it that often this season, they've seen it that often that season not work. And so they're licking their lips when they see Leicester taking a short goal kick.
Yeah, it's always knowing the stage of the game as well, Tags, isn't
Yeah.
it? And the state of play. 2-0 down, Tony says, minutes before half time, just get through. You know, steady the ship a little bit, don't put yourself at risk. And there they are, not really with a plan, again, as Jerry mentioned. They were playing it for the sake of it, etc. And nearly got themselves into trouble a couple of times prior in that same phase. And they were just asking to have the ball nicked off them. And with the quality that Fulham showed today, pay the ultimate price. But yeah, in that instance, get out the field. I always thought, when I first saw teams, trying to play from the back, etc., as a rule, in my mind, like when we were playing, we used to do it occasionally, believe it or not, all those years ago. But I always had the view it's got to be done quickly, before the other team get properly settled. Do it quickly, bang, then it's worth it. You can expose the other team. But they practice day in, day out how to counter teams playing from the goal kick, and it's the ideal situation for the opposition teams, isn't it? They rub their hands together going, go on, play it there, because we're going to nick it off you in a minute.
And the other thing is when you're 2-0 down and there's a minute to go, but it doesn't really matter, there's a minute ago or 20 minutes ago, if you're 2-0 down in a game, not every player on that pitch wants the ball in that scenario. So the two centre halves might go, yeah, give it here, I'll have it. And he looks up, he sees a fullback standing there, not making any kind of forward movement, or reverse movement, as we call it, so running forward just to come back and get it in a bit of space. You're not going to see that all the time from players, because they don't want the ball. They're just hoping, as Matt says and as Tony said, let's just get through to half-time now, lads. We're 2-0 down. Let's get through to half-time and we'll try and sort something else out when we get into the dressing room.
Basically, they're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing you want to do, isn't it?
There aren't many positives, obviously, Tony, but Leicester getting those goals in the second half, particularly late on, can maybe give them a little bit of impetus moving into that game next week. And I am aware I'm clutching at straws somewhat here.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I mean, the goal difference, it's changed by 2, isn't it? And I mean, if you look at I think there's a 10-goal swing, isn't it? To if you discount West Ham, the teams below Leicester, it's a 10-goal swing. But if you lose heavily to Liverpool and Newcastle, then what's happened today becomes really, really relevant, doesn't it? Yes, they've scored 3 goals, but we've seen Leicester do that throughout the course of this season. They score goals. The scoring goals is not the problem. I've got to give James Maddison a mention. I thought he kept plugging away. He got frustrated, and the referee perhaps didn't do him too many favours. But on a positive, he played well. Every time he got the ball, he looked like he was going to make something happen. He just didn't have enough around him today. For whatever reason, the other sort of midfield forward players weren't really on their game. And of course, as I've said, individually, those mistakes were made. So, yeah, I mean, there's not too many positives to be taken from this visit to Craven Cottage, but at least the goal difference has only moved by 2.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's a big old ask, isn't it, the next 3 games. We'll have to wait and see how results go elsewhere. But Leicester don't want to be reliant on what happens elsewhere. They look, people say, take care of business themselves, and they failed to do that today. Now they're going to have everyone concerned, having a very nervous rest of a bank holiday, and throughout the week, regardless of how the results go later on this evening, it's going to be a tense week, isn't it? Kind of building up to next game against Liverpool, where Jerry's right, he touched on it. Leicester have got to go into that game and address what they're deficient at the moment. Not go in there thinking, right, we might take Liverpool to task here, we might outscore them. That's a risky business, isn't it, against the likes of Liverpool at the best of times. But they're not secure enough defensively. Focus on that. Focus on not conceding first and foremost. Doesn't matter how scrappy or ugly it is. Not too dissimilar to, was it last year at home? Here at the King Power, like, nicked a result like that. Yeah, who knows? That was against the odds. That came at a time.
More so, yeah.
That came at a time when everyone thought, oh, blown it, no chance. Similar scenario now. So who's to say it can't happen again? But got to change their mentality as well as their performance.
Yeah, that result, if it hadn't, if Leicester didn't say score the 3 goals, that's the kind of result, because even though Leicester have picked up a couple of decent results in recent games, you still feel like there's more to come from certain players on the pitch. And obviously today, there was some players on the pitch that didn't give their full offering to the team. Now, yes, they've come off the pitch scoring 3 goals. So this game now against Liverpool, which is obviously, goes without saying, it's a ginormous game next week. No matter which way the results go later, it's a massive game. It needs every player pulling in the right direction. No passengers. You can't afford passengers against teams like Liverpool. You can't afford passengers against teams like Fulham. We've just seen it today. But today's result could have been the kind of result that some players aren't able to come back from mentally.
Well, let's hope that you are not right, Jerry, heading into that game next week. Of course, it's a game you can follow with us on Matchday Live as ever here on LCFC TV. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff next week, of course, for that game at King Power Stadium. So we'll be live from 7 p.m, where we'll be hoping for, as Matt says, a repeat of what happened last season at home to the Reds. You can listen or watch the latest episode of Leicester's The Place. It's a podcast with Matt and Jerry in conversation with Ewan Roberts this week. A really good listen, that, a good watch. So find that wherever you get your podcasts, or also watch it on YouTube. Big thanks to Matt and to Jerry, who've been alongside me in the studio today. Thank you very much to Tony Cotty, obviously, who travelled to Craven Cottage today. Safe trip home, Tony, on what's been another disappointing day for the Foxes. Goodbye.